can say a little bit more about why bravery in the boardroom and why now. So for me, it wasn't good. It's not been good enough for me that I got into the boardroom. Yes, it gives me a story to tell. Yes, Monique, you know, you started off, I had teenage parents, I was brought up in a deprived area. When I got into the boardroom, I was the youngest director at the time in my organization. I was the only Black director at the time. It gives me a story to tell, but more importantly, it gives me insights that I can share about what that feels like, what helped me to get there, but also what more can be done so that boardrooms are more inclusive and that actually we achieve what I see as one of my main passions and goals in life, to see boardrooms more representative of the communities and staff they serve. So we have a range of people joining our sessions, but just to share with you about why we started it and why we run the sessions as open to all as well. So as I mentioned, for me, it's not good enough that I got into the boardroom on my own. Yeah, I have a success story, but what can I do with that? And this is one of the reasons why I left the NHS 18 months ago. It was because I wanted to think about, and what more could I do? How could I share my insights and my experience to most importantly help others fulfill their career potential, to help others navigate that route into the boardroom. Most importantly, to help others understand how can you operate and thrive in a boardroom when you are in the minority or minoritized, and that boardroom and that environment may not be inclusive, may feel oppressive, may feel toxic. You may feel really frightened about being the only one, or as Caroline Flanagan changed it to being the first. It's daunting. That puts a lot on your shoulders. So what could I do to share some of what I learned and some of what I did, but also how could I open that conversation up? So what I know is the power of a conversation. The power of the right conversation sparks action. So my thought was, how can we bring this conversation more to the fore? How can I help and facilitate more people to hear from current board members right now? Yes, I was in the boardroom 18 months ago, but there are people in the boardroom right now who are from a minority background. There are people in the boardroom now who are from ethnically diverse backgrounds. There are people going into the boardroom now who come from very different walks of life to what we saw before. What could we do to share, let people hear more about that, to be inspired, to gain insight, and to understand? So who are you in the audience almost, and why is this for you? So I say it's open to all because we're not commissioned by anybody. We're not commissioned by the NHS. Myself and my co-founders, Sam and Liam from Woodrow Mercer Healthcare, we just knew that we wanted to put some energy behind moving and turning the dial now on inclusive leadership and see a more diverse talent development, see a more senior talent pipelines be more diverse, seeing that change in the boardroom and at senior level. We wanted to see more of that, and we wanted to be able to use our own skills and expertise and platform to drive that and make it happen. But we also knew that you have to come at this from different angles. I always talk about two sides of the coin, if you've heard me speak. One is about how do we support aspiring senior leaders, aspiring executives from diverse backgrounds? How do we support them to understand how to navigate into the boardroom, to understand what's needed? How do we help them to access that kind of mentoring conversation when it feels like there aren't enough mentors to go around? The other side of the coin, how do we connect with and speak to and challenge senior decision makers, chairs, CEOs, system level leaders, chief people officers? How do we challenge those who are in charge of recruiting and supporting senior leaders in organizations to think differently, to start looking at their boardroom differently, to understand that it's not just about recruiting diversity in numbers and ticking that box. It's also about what you do to sustain it. It's also about being open and honest about when your boardroom isn't inclusive and what you can do about that. Really taking that look at yourself and being able to challenge. So how do we bring that conversation about so both sides of the coin are discussed? How do we not make sure we're not ignoring the systemic barriers and issues and challenges that need to be removed? We will never achieve full inclusion if we do not remove the systemic barriers to inclusion, removing the racism barriers, the discrimination barriers that are there. This conversation doesn't ignore that. That has to happen. But it's hard work. And I know that collectively, with collective action, with collective energy, we can all keep working on that. This space is also for heads of EDI, heads of leadership and talent development. Those people who may be one person, one role, one middle manager, you know, in a big organization of thousands of people who sit in there with a load of responsibility in their lap about trying to drive these changes, trying to commission programs, trying to look at diverse recruitment, and trying to set up networks. They're trying to do all of that work on their own. A lot of the time they don't have executive sponsorship. The board are nodding. They know it's the right thing to do, but are the board really embodying and backing that work? This space is here for you as well. So that's why these sessions are open to all, because we need to all come together, and I'll be asking you about that at the end. Now, one of the other things that I wanted to bring forth in these sessions is also about the role of the non-executive director. I think I hear mixed reviews. You know, this is an open and honest space too. I hear mixed reviews. Some people say, well, non-exec directors don't really have the same power in the boardroom. They do have a say in the boardroom. Having been in the boardroom for a long time, they do have a say. They have a power, they have influence, and they have a voice. So that role is important. I also agree, though, with the challenge that it's not good enough that where we're seeing diversity increase is in non-executives or in non-voting members of the board. I agree that we should want to see diversity across all of the roles in the boardroom. So I do agree with that challenge, but I don't think we should dampen down or reduce the impact of non-execs. I also think non-execs bring something quite different, and I don't want to spoil it because I'm going to be speaking to our panel guests in a moment. We have two here with us today, but what I do want to say is understanding the wealth of expertise and difference they bring into the boardroom from their backgrounds is also important. I also know the NHS needs to modernise. The NHS needs to modernise is this thinking about where it can draw talent from, and actually being able to draw talent from wider, you know, not just your traditional NHS spaces. Exactly, Andy, thank you for saying that. You've mostly said it better than I have, but it's absolutely true. And I think actually being able to draw expertise and diversity of thought from other spaces in industry, in business. No, I'm not saying let's dilute and move away from good patient care and connecting to our community. That's not what I'm talking about. But actually bringing that diversity of thought can bring something different, can bring a different solution and a different lens to some of what the NHS is facing. So I'm going to get off my soapbox there, but I just wanted to be able to explain, if you're new to joining us, why we have Bravery in the boardroom and what it's about. Now, what I am going to do is ask my panel guests to switch their cameras on and put their mics on, and I'm going to ask them to join me now so we can kick off the panel conversation. So, and I'll ask them to introduce themselves too. So a very warm welcome to Priya, Wayne and Elizabeth. And if I shall start with Elizabeth, because I can see you here on my screen first, would you like to introduce yourself?
Thank you very much, Monique, and good afternoon, everybody. My name is Elizabeth Nyawade, and I'm Chief People Officer here at Surrey and Sussex NHS Trust. Thank you.
Thank you. And I will come to Priya.
Hi, everyone. I'm Priya Hunt, and I am a non-exec director in the Royal Berkshire NHS Trust.
Thank you, Priya. And good afternoon, Wayne.
Hey, hi, Monique. I'm Wayne Wright, and I'm a non-exec at Mason and Tunbridge Wells NHS Trust here in the Garden of England, Kent.
Thank you very much. Thank you. So I'm going to be asking the panel a series of questions. As I said, we will have time after the panel questions for questions from the audience. So I will ask you to have your questions ready. Please use the Q&A function if you can. That will help us a lot in terms of being able to pull your questions out. But if I may kick off with Elizabeth, if that's okay. Elizabeth, can you just summarize your journey into the boardroom for us and just tell us a little bit more about what helped you to get there? It's a big question. It's a loaded question.
It is, Monique. Summarizing the journey, the bits that I can remember well, maybe. So for me, it was a very, very determined approach that I took on my journey to the boardroom. What do I mean by that? I knew quite early on in my career, joining the NHS, that what I wanted was to do my very best and get to the very top. of my career journey. And as a human resources professional, for me, that was to land a board level responsibility and role as the executive director for this function. So I placed a lot of focus on it, going back from round about 6 months after I joined the NHS. And that is about 14 years ago now. I was very focused, very determined, and plotted out my journey in terms of what do I need to know? What learning do I need? What do I need to be aware of, understand from an education point of view and also from an experience point of view? And I just kept a real strict focus on that, writing down my goals, writing down the support I need, and reaching out to people who can help me. And along the journey, yes, we always have the line manager who helps, but it's also about reaching out sideways to other people, reaching out to mentors, reaching out to people who can coach you. But one thing that really, really helped me along the way was getting hold of a sponsor. And having a sponsor is very different from having a coach, and it's very different from having a mentor. And I worked with my sponsor over a period of 18 months. And at the end of that 18 months, I had landed my executive level role. So having a sponsor was really big, it was key, and it was the one key thing I can identify that absolutely opened that channel for me. Thank you.
Thank you, Elizabeth. And Wayne, if I could come to you and ask you the same question, I know, I know you've had a very busy journey in life so far, but it'd be great for us to hear that from you.
Yeah, I think mine's a little bit different in the sense I'm probably a little older than the lovely young ladies that are in front of me, you know. So, I've come from a sort of a different direction in the sense of scientists, corporates, board, and then latterly, you know, involved in healthcare here in the US. But also, I think I didn't have really a sponsor. I didn't have anybody to, you know, sort of showcase or to signpost me. So I've ended up having to sort of, you know, move away through treacle in that respect to get to the positions that I'm in today. But I think really throughout the journey, and I will just continually push this, you know, as we talk about the whole elements of Brave in the Boardroom, is recognize the value that you bring to any organization. And it's that self-confidence in understanding what I'm good at and what I'm not good at, and that self-awareness, which has put me in good stead to say, okay, what should I really go for? I think also at the same time, I was fortunate to sort of fall into others, what I call less salubrious type arrangements. So for example, I was a governor for 5 years at my local school. And that gives you a good sense of governance going through it. And then obviously, you know, got involved in a little trustee as well as a trustee for charities. Again, that gives you another sort of leg up in terms of experience. So all along, I've collected these pockets of experience which have propelled me to the bigger roles going forward as well, whether it's in the private as well as obviously the not-for-profit sector.
Can I just pick up on something you said there, Wayne? So you said about having that self-confidence and self-assurance. Where did that come from for you? Because get it, understand your comment, but how did you build that if you didn't have the sponsorship?
No idea.
Yeah.
No idea. No, seriously, I mean, you know, and I think I've been very fortunate because I do understand this element of imposter syndrome. I understand that self-doubt that a lot of us as Black people do. You know, and I have members of my family who have elements of that going through. But I think I've always wanted to kick across the grain in relation to what people say. So I had, for example, when I remember very clearly at 10, my cohort friends berated me for going to a grammar school. Why don't I go to the local comprehensive school? Why do you want to go to grammar school? I was the only one that went to the grammar school. All of those went to the comprehensive school. The same with university. Oh, nobody would be able to do this. I did it, you know, regardless of whatever. So anybody that sort of told me to do this, and I thought, well, no, why can't I do that? So I think I had that natural inbuilt element of it. Of course, clearly, there's always going to be elements of self-doubt along the journey, but I think what I learned very early on is that, you know, recognize that value that I can bring to an organization and really augment that as best as I can. So, and I think, you know, when you do that several times, you learn the discipline of actually going through the motions in the organizations that you work with.
Okay, thank you for that. And Priya, can you tell us about your journey into the boardroom? I know you've become a NED most recently, but it'd be great to hear about your corporate journey as well.
Sure. The first thing I'm going to start off with is to say that what I'm going to say is going to be my opinion, and I'm very conscious that that might differ from Elizabeth and Wayne's opinions, which in some ways is actually a good thing because that brings you a diversity of thought in this discussion.
Absolutely.
And it might differ from, you know, my board, my team's opinion as well. So I just wanted to caveat that. And it's really interesting. My journey, I actually started my career in India with British Airways, and I was an IT manager in the IT sector. Traveled a lot, covered a lot of countries from Africa to Australia. By the time I finished, moved into different corporate roles. I have 30 years of corporate experience. I don't know how young you think I am, Wayne, but probably not as much as you think. I look.
Well, you look very good. I'll tell you that. You look very good.
So I've got 30 years of corporate experience in the airline industry, in the telecoms industry, and in utilities. And again, like Elizabeth, I was very determined. I was very sort of clear on what I wanted to do, and it was leadership and leading large teams, which was something I was very keen on. But unlike Elizabeth, I actually never had a sponsor, and that was actually a self-designed thing. I had coaches, I had mentors, and I'm exceedingly grateful for the coaches and mentors, including peers and including what we call reverse mentoring in some of the teams, where, you know, people who were hierarchically in different roles often would mentor their leaders from their perspective, which I found exceedingly powerful. So I've had mentors and coaches, but never a sponsor. And that was quite on purpose, because I decided that after spending a long time in the airline industry, I thought I need to not be attached to one specific area or industry. And with a sponsor, you end up, you know, doing that a little bit, not all the time. And Elizabeth, you may disagree on that one, but so that was my opinion anyway. And with COVID, when COVID happened, I thought long and hard about what I wanted, and there was something about values, purpose, and like yourself, Monique, hearing your story, I thought I wanted to do something different, not because I haven't enjoyed or learned or loved every moment I've spent in all the industries I have, but I felt it was time for me to just do something different. So I went into more of the coaching space and more into the academics of coaching as well. And I also decided to have just the start of a portfolio career. But I was, just like Wayne said, I have been a trustee in a charity before, which gave me really good grounding in order to become a NED. And I think the most difficult thing in terms of being a NED is understanding the difference, especially when you've been an exec before, is to understand the difference between being an executive and a non-executive, and making sure that you are getting that balance right, that you're not stepping on your fellow executives' toes in a unitary board, but at the same time, you're pulling your weight and adding value. So that's my story.
Thank you for that. You make a really crucial point there, because both yourself and Wayne have been executives before, you know, and I think sometimes people feel that, and I'm generalizing a little bit here, but people feel like, you know, oh, as a NED, you don't get it. You know, you don't get it, you don't understand. And actually, I think having non-executives who have been executives before helps to bring even more expertise. But also for the audience listening today, you know, whilst Wayne and Priya are sharing their journey, they're here because they are in an NHS boardroom at the moment. They also have been in the boardroom as executives. So I think it's almost double whammy that we're getting from you here in terms of your insights. So we always start off in a good place, right? In terms of, so how did you get there and what went well? Elizabeth, I know, because we've spoken before ourselves, I know that your journey into the boardroom hasn't necessarily been as smooth as how you just described it. So it'd be great for you to share with us some of the challenges that you faced on the way as well.
Yeah, there have been a few, quite a number actually. So I think the greatest challenge I faced is one of constant underestimation. Can you do this? Are you really ready for this? Are you biting more than you can chew? You're too ambitious. Are you sure that's for you? And I got a lot of that along the way, which can knock you, it does knock you back a little bit, and it might make you question yourself. And how I dealt with that was that I can't quite describe it, but when you've got that inner determination, when you know this is what I want and I'll do everything and focus on it and keep going regardless, whether it's resilience or other, I think it's more than resilience for me, but that don't lose focus, just keep going regardless. And understandably, and you know, I'll never, I'm sharing my journey here. I will never ever know the truth of what may have happened. So in some cases along the way, but when you do your very best, perhaps you go to an interview and you feel you've really done well. But for my color, I may have gotten in there. You will never quite know, is it just the fact that, you know, it's your color that is the barrier or other? Those are some of the things you will just never, ever get to know. But there were times I felt like that when I perhaps really tried to move on and I wasn't either moving on or I just could not break through. I had some of those thoughts. And again, this is very personal to me, but those are some of the challenges I faced. And I am quite introverted as a person, so I really struggled with the networking element of it and getting out there in the wider space. Because some of what you also need to do, I found, or I needed to do, was to get out there more, to network more. In my experience, people feel a little bit more comfortable with people they have either met once or twice, or people they are familiar with, instead of just totally new person coming out of nowhere. So I had to really work hard and get out there to social events, develop my social profile, Twitter, the likes of it. All of these were also intended to help me along the way to achieve my goal. What are the, and also those lack of representation, like it or not, and I used to do a lot of this. Each time I saw a job I wanted, I'd very quickly go on their website to scan and see, do they have any, you know, diverse members of the executive team or non-executive team? And that is something I did even here where I am. And that was the first thing that came to mind. What do their people look like? Who is out there on their board? That mattered a lot to me. It gave me a little bit sense of comfort, security. There's just something you can't quite describe in seeing somebody else like you. So representation is big and that matters. And there isn't a lot of that. So those are just some of those few challenges I encountered along the way. Thank you.
And they're big challenges though, Elizabeth, what you spoke about there. So, you know, both you and Wayne have referred to almost, I want to say like an innate level of resilience, you know, in terms of there's something in you, I was very determined. And we've definitely heard from panel guests before about, you know, you need to have that fire in your belly as well. You know, it's not just about the opportunities, you need to be ready. You need to be ready to go. I definitely navigated some of my career in that way because I put my hand up when those opportunities came. But what I also heard there is, like you said, when you have prepared, you are ready, but the door didn't open the first time. And you having that resilience to go back again and again to that door. And I think we shouldn't have to do that. If the recruitment is fair and inclusive, then if you're ready and you are the right person on merit, then I hope you get those roles. And I hope that's what happens in those situations. But people also understanding that in some scenarios, you will have to go again and again, fairly. So sometimes it can happen unfairly, and sometimes it can happen fairly. But in both scenarios, what I heard you say there really is about you had that, your vision was strong and you were very determined to get there. But I think also helping people to understand about representation. I've got a question that I'll dig into a little bit more about that in a moment, because representation does matter. You're right. But it's also about, you said something there about it could be a false sense of security, but it does help to see that. What I would say to our chairs on the call, to our senior decision makers, obviously, Elizabeth, you are chief of people as well. A lot of people now are going online and doing those checks, what you just described. They are looking at the diversity of boards. They are looking at organizations' EDI strategies. They are voting with their feet. It is an employees market at the moment. Yeah, we know that. We know that a lot of people are walking away from the NHS and public sector as well. You know, so I think that thing, whereas before, the NHS had a kind of reputation as an employer of choice and an employer for life, right? I think that's changing a lot. We hear this comment, #Great Resignation. I just think organizations shouldn't miss out or ignore how important diversity and inclusion is now, and how you can be vetted before. So some of the best candidates may not choose you. And I just want to pick up on, I think it was Andy who was saying about, you know, the lack of turnover almost in execs. So the opportunity to diversify exec teams more. What I would say is, be thinking about your succession planning. You know, if you have a wealth of senior diverse talent who are ready for those roles, that is something that you can do. You're not going to, why would you, if someone's doing their job really well, this isn't about pushing people out of their roles unnecessarily. We're not talking about that. But what I would hope to see, therefore, though, is that your succession planning is on fire. And actually, you've got a wealth of senior diverse talent chomping at the bit and ready and waiting. And actually, if some of these conversations that I've been having outside of these sessions are right, people are saying they are looking for senior diverse talent. So actually, if there's talent in your organization and those senior roles are not turning over, I think there's opportunities to share and help promote, and even maybe what Elizabeth was saying, to sponsor some of that talent to be able to step into roles where there are spaces elsewhere. So, you know, this is the opportunity to collaborate and work on this together. But thank you for that, Elizabeth. So Wayne, I'm going to come to you. So you touched on some of your challenges about when you were growing up. Is there anything else you'd want to share with us there about any other challenges you experienced, particularly coming into boardroom level?
I think the only private sector is a lot easier than the public sector, to be honest, really. And it was my third attempt at joining the board of an NHS. To be fair, I didn't need to. You don't join an NHS board for the money. You know, you ultimately you get several times more in the private sector. But because I've been in Maidstone for a long time, you know, I could see some of the issues around the populace here. And I just wanted to make a difference. I thought I could make a difference to the organisation. So, so the 2 times before that, I didn't even get on the shortlist, which, like, for me, I'm like, you know, wow, you know, for whatever reason, because of my experience in the private sector, and really questioned the recruiter the 3rd time round. She really was on her knees trying to beg me to apply for this role. Now, because I said, look, I value my time really much. Other people would value what I bring to the table. You know, don't waste my time, please. If this is a tokenism type activity, not interested, you know? So ultimately, I think somebody mentioned in the chat. So for me, it was really, I had to be really persuaded to apply for this role. And I even asked that question, not a question in that sort of, you know, overt way, but I asked it in a roundabout way in terms of why would you want me to come to the organisation? What do you feel that I could bring to the organisation that you don't have at the moment?
Yeah.
And it was great to hear them to talk about some of the things that I could bring to the table that they didn't have on the board. And for me, that's still the deal. So it's not a matter of just I need to be on the board. It's again, have that sort of contract relationship with the board to say, okay, what do you expect of me? Because you see something in what I bring in terms of my experience, my business experience, my experience with the community, blah, 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 blah. What assets that you feel could add value to what you need on your journey as an organisation? And I think that bit was really important. But that was a real challenge for me, you know. And I think the NHS has changed a lot. There's definitely has been over the last 20 years, less so over the last 5 years, this merry-go-round of non-execs going from one trust to another trust to another trust, you know, doing their 4 or 8 year tenure and then going to another one and serving out their pension that way. But there's been a lot of changes, and I think, you know, people are recognizing they need that more rounded combination of public sector experience, but also private sector realism and commercialism as well.
Thank you very much, Wayne. If I could just remind everybody, if you are posting in the chat, can you just make sure that you've got it chosen to go to everybody, because I can see a few messages popping up that are only going to the host and panelists. So if you just check your drop down on the chat and just make sure your messages are going to everyone, that would be great. Thank you. So just picking up on, I just want to pick up on that. And Priya, if I can come to you with this question, because I saw a comment in the chat, which I'd like to build on. We see that trusts are doing stuff, and Wayne just said, didn't he, about things are changing in the NHS. Priya, you mentioned reverse mentoring, and I saw that we have EDI leads with us, so thank you for your comment there. But I think people also join these conversations to hear about good practice, or to hear about what people are trying, because sometimes you're trying it out, isn't it? You don't know if it's going to be good practice yet. It would just be great to hear from you, from your perspective, Priya, some of the things that, if you're aware, are there any other things going on in your organisation that you're aware of in relation to trying to tackle inequalities?
And there are indeed, and I'll talk about a few without and this is a mix of stuff I'm seeing in my current organization, but also things I've seen elsewhere as well. And I think diversity, as we talk about it, is just the doorway. What's more important is inclusion. And what's more important is for people to have the respect to hear, listen to, and actually understand different perspectives. And when we say diversity and inclusion, it shouldn't be just gender or the color of the skin or, you know, a few obvious things, but it could also be, like, I think Monique, you mentioned it, it could also be thinking, it could also be industry, you know, like coming from different, especially in healthcare. I think it's really important to bring people who are not necessarily, I mean, not everyone, but who have a different perspective, and it'll be really interesting to bring that diversity in. So diversity is more than just you know, one side of the coin, if that's the right term to use. And I think things like reverse mentoring, for example, is I think it's a great idea, especially when the leadership team is fully sponsoring it. So it can't be done otherwise. And if it's fully sponsored, then I think it makes a real difference. It builds confidence in people. It builds connections, which would have been more difficult to come by. And it also builds, I mean, for leaders themselves, it builds a different perspective, and they can hear from people what, you know, what their perspective is and what are they feeling on the ground. So I'm a big fan of reverse mentoring. The other thing I think for me is really important, and it was interesting, Wayne mentioned it a little bit, it is it's really important when we are that we are providing opportunities to our, you know, we've recruited a diverse force, but are we providing opportunities to everyone? And opportunities includes training and development, and I think it's really important. You know, Wayne mentioned about self-assurance and confidence, and how, you know, he has that, and great, not everybody does, and I have had periods where I have suffered from not having it, and one of the things that has helped me is mentors and coaches have helped me. So, you know, talking to coaches and working on myself, reflection has helped me. There is a question on the chat which said, have you thought about other things? For me, yoga is my go-to movement, and yoga has helped me. So I do this every day, and that sort of just calms me down and helps me reflect and come back more resilient into the working day. So it's things like that, and it's providing opportunities for health, well-being, and training and development, which I'm seeing happening. I mean, we are very proud of, and we are very grateful. We've had a donation from charity, from some very charitable community members, and we've built a health and well-being center for our NHS workforce, and making sure we are using it now and making sure we are really optimizing it is the important thing now. So it's things like this which might sound soft, but I think are crucial in building that resilience and building the ability. I mean, the higher up you go in an organization, I don't think it's intelligence or that matters, or age or anything of that sort. What matters is the resilience you have to deal with a lot of stuff that'll come left field, and building that would be a really important thing.
Thank you, Priya. I think there's something you said there which is very profound about, it's one thing to ensure you have a more diverse workforce, but are you looking at whether you are then providing equal opportunity for all? And do you understand? So I think that's do you understand what is needed to ensure there is equal opportunity? Do you understand from your workforce, from your colleagues, from your teams, what is it that is preventing them from either feeling and perceiving that opportunity, or the absolute hardcore fact, it is not equal opportunity and something needs to be done? Because I do think there is something about some of the interventions that are being commissioned and you're seeing happening a lot. They're not wrong, but they may not tackle some of the other issues that we're speaking about. Elizabeth, if I could come to you, because I said, and please, I hope you don't feel like I'm honing down on you because you're a chief of people, but it's really great to have you here, as a Black board member, but also as a chief of people, to understand a little bit more. How do you feel you're able to use your power and influence in the boardroom to help tackle some of the inequalities we're talking about?
Very good question. Persistence. Persistence, not giving up on an initiative or a possible solution or a possible solution to what we are trying to achieve here. I think based on my experience, you will say something once and you are right, we get all the nods and we get everybody, yes, we are behind you, and that's a really good idea. But it's how to get it off the ground and get it up and running and also sustain it. That is the challenge that we have. So it's not giving up, it's making sure the focus remains on that agenda item. It's making sure the focus on representation and some of those things we could do are always on the agenda. And yes, you might get it removed from the agenda 20 times. You go back on the 21st and put it there again, because these things do happen. And they happen in different formats. Sometimes it's a question of, is the timing quite right? Maybe not, or this is really, really hot for now. Let's come back to it another time. It's not forgetting it. It's staying the course. Keep pushing. Keep your foot on that pedal until when you get what you want to achieve for colleagues. And whether it's something that will make a difference to one person or two people, keep going at it, because that is a difference to that one or two. I've reached a stage whereby I'm focusing on the art of the possible. What I can do for 2, 5, 10 people instead of what I can do to the 10,000 people around me all at once. So it's keep going on that, build on your success and just never give up.
Thank you for that, Elizabeth. And just, I know that when we've had questions before, people will say, but you're in the boardroom. So I'm almost flipping the question on its head and going, you're in the boardroom, you're using your voice in the way that you've explained, you're honing down on things. But what about me? I haven't got a senior title. I'm passionate about what I'm speaking about. I want to see change. I'm lobbying for my team, but I haven't got that exec director title. I haven't got, that coverage, if you like. What advice would you give to me if give to our audience in that situation where you're passionate, you want change, but you haven't got the authority in your job title?
Another good question. For me, and I've experienced this and I experience it here, I think it's their passion that keeps me going. It's their passion and that obligation towards them to deliver it for my colleagues and those around me that keeps me going. But then there is also something I do ask myself every day. Yes, I'm here today, but there could be 2,000 other Black women better qualified than me, more capable than I am, who are not here but for their color. So I wake up every day, I sit on this desk every day with that in my mind to make sure I'll do my very best, because there could be somebody sitting here today doing much, much better work that I am doing. So that challenge, I challenge myself, and those colleagues almost hold me to account to deliver for them in a way that they might not realize, but I go away thinking, what am I going to do to that voice, to somebody who made the time to stop and share their experience with me, hoping that I am going to champion their cause and deliver for them. So it's almost that holding me to account in that way, and also recognizing every day that, there could be somebody here just really doing so much more than I am doing. So what am I going to do in my time now to deliver, given the office that I hold today? That keeps me ticking along.
It's a really powerful statement that you said there about, holding yourself to account to people who have come and spoken to you about what they're experiencing. Really powerful. And we hear a lot about people sharing lived experiences, isn't it? And people being encouraged to share lived experience. But I think the other side of that coin is when, okay, I've shared my experience and now what? Nothing happens. So really hear you with what you're saying there about what you're doing. And I think the honesty that you're sharing there about that weight, if I could call it a weight, that's a weight to carry, isn't it? About seeing your responsibility in that way. I just want to pick up, before I come to you, Wayne, I just want to pick up on, thank you, Dawn, for your comment in the chat. You must be reading my mind, because this week I've been speaking about our Bravery in the Boardroom sessions and saying that actually I think there are other colleagues who agree with you, Dawn, about wanting to see more social care colleagues, more colleagues from local authority here in this space as well. I think a few things are, whilst we know there are some things that are quite pertinent to health that you'll hear shared on these conversations, but you also hear things that are absolutely applicable across industry and across public sector. I've actually reached out because I don't have a great number of contacts in social care. So anyone on this call today who has contacts in social care or local authority, please help me put the call out. I've put it out there to say for future webinars, I would love to have somebody join us from social care or from local authority or from health and care in the community at a senior level. I think it would be great for them to come and be part of the panel, not just to share insights, but to also share what we're talking here about, the interaction. And also because there could be possibly even more diversity in the social care workforce. So absolutely some of what we're talking here is applicable. So I'd really appreciate anybody who can help with that. Please come on board, drop me a message separately, because I think it's really important too. I agree with your point, Dawn. Thank you for that. But Wayne, if I come to you now, about just talking about being in the boardroom now, let's get into the room. Let's start to talk about what some of that's about. From your perspective, what difference does it make to have a diversified board?
Well, the bottom line, I always say to organisations that you've got to have a board that's representative of not only your people, but also your customers. Because invariably that diversity of thought and understanding is super important when you're creating initiatives, products, etc. And look at Apple and their struggle with getting the FaceTime for Black and ethnic minority groups, and getting that right, because they've had a load of developers just thinking it was okay for one particular group of people. So it's those sort of basic elements where you need, also to have that understanding. And it's financially good. It's the evidence is there, in terms of the financial performance of diverse boards, outperform those who don't have that diversity and element in their organisation. So it's a no-brainer in that respect, and I think that's why a lot of certainly the FTSE 100 are making great strides. Probably not as much as I would like it to be, and I'm sure the same as in the public sector. But there are, looking to really ensure that is represented not only at executive level but also at board level. So it's really, really important that is the case anyway. So,
thank you. And just while you were saying that, and we've been speaking about representation, and I just want to pick up on this comment because I absolutely agree with it. Is that this isn't a numbers game. This isn't a numbers game, and I spoke about tick box. you'll hear me speak about what we will have a danger of one in, one out. And I just want to pick up on this comment, and it's heartbreaking to hear that you're considering stepping down from your executive role, but it's exactly why I was saying at the beginning of this call about there are two sides to this. If you only focus on the number, or increasing the percentage, but you are not addressing that the boardroom may still be a toxic environment with systemic issues. And that's what I was saying, that we will have one in, one out, number one, or I have spoken to a number of ethnically diverse colleagues, senior colleagues, more than capable of being in the boardroom, more than capable at working at the most senior level. And they tell me straight and plain, I am not going into those roles. I am not taking those roles because I do not want to be the only one. I can see what the mix is like up in there. I'm not going in there, And that, like I said, is heartbreaking. Right?
It's heartbreaking and it's sad because, and I'm sure there are some difficult, situations that have occurred. I think for me, I've always seen, it's weird, but I've always seen myself, because I haven't had that sponsor, I haven't had that trailblazer ahead of me. I've had to make that myself. So, but for me, my mindset is that I need to be there to give the opportunity for those behind me. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So it depends, if you look at it from a sort of not a selfish perspective, but in the sense that, oh my gosh, do I need the stress in my career at this moment in time? I understand that. But if you have the resilience and the ability to say, if you're being there makes a difference to the organization, which means that in the future, somebody else can come up behind you and get the same opportunities as well to be in that position, then so be it. So you follow that difficult road to make it a lot clearer for those behind you. And I think, and I've seen that so many times in the private sector, in going to executive roles, as well as to the board level. There are a lot of misconceptions, a lot of racism elements coming through as well. But when they see you perform, when they see you add massive value to the organization, financially, as well as obviously in terms of the leadership element that you bring to the organization, it's like, okay, we need this. We need more of this, and it provides that runway for others to come through.
I think what I would say in relation to have been in the space where I've been the only one is about what support I have around me when I have been in that space. And actually, there's two things I'd say. One is about my support mechanisms that I put in place when I've been the only one, but also about this is exactly why we are doing Bravery in the Boardroom, because I want to stop that people are the only one. I want to be able to see that we have a wealth of talent rising up at the same time. So actually being the only one becomes lesser and lesser of an issue. I called it out at the beginning and I will continue to call it out. There has to be sustained pressure to remove the systemic barriers and issues. And you're absolutely right about until that starts to break down, you will be in situations what you're describing. And it's therefore, how do we support you and support others who people are speaking to me in confidence about wanting micro networks, safe spaces where they can connect with their fellow executives, their fellow Black executives, their fellow Asian executives, their fellow ethnically diverse executives, to come into a safe space and to be able to connect and support each other whilst they're working in those environments. But we have to see the work happen about those boards being called out as well and held to account. And I heard what was said earlier about diversity is there are 9 protected characteristics, and diversity is even more than the protected characteristics. We have a focus on race equality in the NHS because of the workforce race equality standard, because of Simon Stevens calling it out a number of years ago about the percentage change he wanted to see. And that's why, although you have that focus, you have to be very careful about the numbers game. You have to be very careful about boards almost folding their arms and saying, well, we're doing this because we have to. Because the person in the space experiencing that are going to experience challenges. But Wayne, I hear you and I hear your challenge and call there as well about.
Well, I think Monique, I don't want to take over the conversation, but for me, it's really important that you're not setting up people for failure. And what tends to happen, and somebody mentioned the element about tokenism, is that you get somebody in that position, they fail, oh, we're never going to, recruit somebody of that ilk again. And the point I'm trying to make is that we need to have mechanisms to not only identify talent, but also support them through the journey to where they are. So, what you're saying, having little networking events or other opportunities where Black professionals or those on the boards can actually have those conversations is really, really important. But to be fair, Black people are pretty rubbish at reaching out at times and asking for help and support. And so, in my experience, and again, I just say to all you guys, look up with me on LinkedIn. I'm sure the same with Priya and Elizabeth, because again, we want to help. We want to ensure that you're able to have the best possible support to get you to where you want to be.
Thank you. Thank you very much. And I absolutely know people will take you up on that offer for sure too. So just wanted to come back to my question about prioritizing. So we hear and see a lot's going on. We heard some of the things that are happening in organizations. And I just wanted to get some insight onto this in terms of your view. So Elizabeth, if I could come to you, what do you think should be prioritized to help turn the dial now? Are there any one set of interventions or any areas that you think actually, if you're listening as a head of EDI, if you're listening as a chief people officer, what would be your view on that and what should be prioritized?
That's a challenging question. I think for me, we need to work on multiple things at the same time. One size will not fit all, and it varies from one organization to another. I think the key thing for me, based on my experiences in different organizations, not just here where I am, it's getting the leadership team on board. Do the boards understand the value for diversity? Do they see the value of diversity in that organization? It's talking to your peers, your colleagues, where are they on this subject matter? Because you will find that organizations vary. There are some that have absolutely embraced the value of diversity, and they will do everything to go after diversity because they see the value. There are other organizations where they're maybe a little bit behind the curve and they're still struggling in that space of just trying to understand what will we get out of this? Well, why does it matter? A person is a person is a person. Let's just get a person in. People are at different stages, so you can't just advocate for one thing. But what I have found that does help is having those individual conversations, sussing out yourself where your board is on this matter, and then understanding whether it's you doing the legwork on one-to-one to maybe share and convey the reason and the reason why we need diversity in boards, or finding other ways around it. So for me, it starts with the leadership team. Once you get it right at that level, the rest is so much easier. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for that, Elizabeth. And then just to come to you, Wayne, I think, and just to pick up on what you were saying there about that kind of challenge, that kind of challenge that you've thrown down to us about, yes, it can feel like that, but actually we need to try and manage that and try and think about what we can do to overcome that. From your perspective, can you give us some insight into how it feels for you? So I understand what you're saying about I've been there and done it, but I think actually being able to be open about how it feels sometimes when you're in the minority in the boardroom. Can you give us some insight into that?
I think you're always, well, let me put it this way. For me, I'm always conscious that I'm what I do and what I say is going to have an impact on those coming up. So, of course, in that respect, subconsciously, I'm very much more careful in terms of what I do and what I say and how I represent myself as a Black man in the boardroom, whether it's in America or over here in Europe, in the UK. Because I'm conscious that I don't want nobody to have any sort of say, well, we've got a Black man in our boardroom and he's this, or he has that characteristics, or he has that. So it's a subconscious thing. I don't think about it, but I'm very, very careful in terms of how I represent myself, how I deliver, you know, presentations, and how I engage with everybody as well. And I think putting that aside, I think it's really then important to emphasize your role as a leader in the organization and to be seen as a leader of all peoples, not just any particular group. So, for example, I would, because obviously, as you talked about, the board role as a non-executive is different in the sense of an executive role. You're there as from what I call assurance perspective. What I mean by that, we want to make sure that the executives are doing what they're saying. That's the bottom line. So I would spend time with the guys in the front line, with porters and cleaners, and people who I would call the unforgotten parts of the organization, because I want them to realize that they're super important. If they weren't around, they, as an organization, we wouldn't function, full stop. And try and understand their issues. So when I get the reports from the executive team, I can connect the two on that basis. Or I go to the ambulance trust because there's an issue. So I'll sit down with the call center, understand some of their issues. So I know that the operational systems that we have here, how they impact on the Southeast Ambulance Trust over there. So it's getting to grips with all people and being seen as a leader of all people is super important. And I think sometimes we don't understand. That's probably another conversation in its own self. How can you be a minority, be seen as a leader of all people, not just a particular group? I think for me that's a super important.
I think there's I definitely hear about the more scrutiny. You know, feeling like there's more scrutiny, feeling like there's more on your shoulders sometimes, as you say, because you are a role model and you're representing, and you know that kind of bias to see failure can sometimes be there as opposed to the bias to see good, right? That's the way I would describe it. But I think also in what you're sharing there, I think I really always ask you guys to really share that insight about what it feels like, not to scare people off, but it comes back to that point about being in a state of readiness, that this is the environment, this is how it feels at times. You hit a really important point there, because it's what Elizabeth was saying as well, and it's what Priya, it's about inclusion, and inclusion is for all. So yes, you are there representing a minoritized group for sure, but also you are there as a leader in the board, and your role is there to represent your community and the staff that you serve. And Wayne, I know for you are very active in your local community for all what you do as well. And I know you've shared with me, that's part of the reason why you wanted to be a NED in one of your local hospitals. So I think that's a really important point that you made there. Thank you. So Priya, I'm kind of winding down now with my questions. I'm going to open it up because we've got some questions and some comments I'm going to pick up in the chat, but I'm going to try and ask you guys to give me, I'm going to give you a minute. So in less than 1 minute, in terms of some of what we've heard today, I really want to just hone down on this. If you were asked, what's the most important advice that you would give to any aspiring executives in the audience today? And Priya, if I can come to you first.
So I would say the most important advice would be to be very clear on your own personal purpose and values. So before climbing up a ladder, it's important you know which ladder you want to climb up. So I think for me, if you're clear on your own purpose and values, that will then enable you to be the kind of leader you want to be.
Thank you. Thank you. And Elizabeth, if I could come to you with the same question.
I guess for me, it's for all those aspiring, the advice I'll give you is, yes, it can be done. Stay focused and be absolutely determined to achieve your goal. Seek all the help you can get along the way. People will help you. I have been helped along the line, but just keep the focus and keep going. It can be done. Thank you.
Can I be difficult and ask you, and also when you said about seek all the help you can get, you mentioned about having a sponsor, but just, you know, we have people joining these sessions who say, I'm stuck. You know, I don't know where to go. I don't know what to do next. I don't know where to navigate. Is there a little bit more you could say about that there, Elizabeth, what you'd suggest there in terms when you say seek all the help you can get? Where should I be looking for that?
For me, it was everywhere. And yes, I did ask people from my line manager, my peers. I'd be on events like this and pick up people, maybe somebody who is a speaker at an event, and go to them, share with them what I was trying to achieve and ask for their help. Some people will help you, some people will not help you, but keep going. You'll always find one or two people who will help you. I'm willing and ready to share my life journey in details with anybody who is seeking, who would like that help. But there's also something about investing in yourself. There will be an element of self-sacrifice, be that on your time or what you need to read up on, some of the courses you need to attend just to prepare you to get to where you need to get to. So that focus, determination, and seeking to find out what do I need to get me where I want to go, and then putting absolutely everything behind you. It means sacrificing your weekends, reading up, studying, looking up things, and you have to do some of that to help yourself first before you even get to the coaches, the mentors, and all the sponsors. So there's a bit of self-sacrifice and your own working hard on it. And then there is one or two people who will point you in a direction here or there, but it can be done.
Love that. It can be done. That's it. It can be done. And Wayne, if I could come to you, what would be your most pertinent advice? If people aren't following Wayne on LinkedIn already, you will see that Wayne shares a wealth of advice about leadership, about business growth. There is so much there. So me asking you, Wayne, in less than 1 minute is quite challenging, right?
Yeah, but I appreciate the call out for that. Thank you, Monique. But ultimately, individuals need to recognize the value that they bring to the table. Priya's talked about it, Elizabeth talked about it. You've got to understand yourself. That self-awareness is really important. And if you're really struggling, let me give you a little tip. Go home today. Write down all the things that you bring to an organization. Just write it down. And really put a smile on your face. Because sometimes we second guess ourselves as people too much. Don't second guess yourself. You are and can be of value. You can bring so much impact and benefit to whoever you're involved with. And the gaps that you have, as Elizabeth just said, get your head into some books, or got you some courses, or YouTube is full of great content that allows you to get yourself up to speed with certain elements, whether it's on understanding governance, understanding the role of a non-exec director, or even executive roles. What does that entail? What does that look like? What do you need to prepare yourself? How do you position yourself? Because invariably, most people want to go to that next level. One, they don't want to take the effort and the pain to get there in terms of the work. But the second aspect is that they set themselves up to fail. And I don't want you to set yourself up for failure. I want you to succeed, and you've got to sometimes put in the work and get good people around you to be able to help you. So, is that 1 minute?
A little bit over, but I'll allow you that. So thank you so much, because you've taken all my questions, you've taken my challenges. We've had some great questions coming up in the chat, so I'm going to try and navigate myself through them. But Elizabeth, I know we had a question quite early on for you, so if I could come to you first with a question from the audience. I think the question was, I hope I'm paraphrasing this right. What have you done when you've experienced low times, and how have you overcome them?
Oh, yeah. I used to do a lot of running as an individual. I'm a migrant in this country. I'm here without family, just me and my lovely daughter, just the two of us. So I don't have that wide network of support where you can go to your auntie or uncle, brother. So it's me and my daughter, and I love running, road running. So I'd go out and just run and run and run. Unfortunately, this year in February, I was diagnosed with a condition that means I can't run as much as I used to run. So I missed that terribly, but running was my heaven. I'd go for really long runs, 10 miles running, just thinking through that, and I'd come back feeling so refreshed. So yes, you need something else. So what I do these days is go for a long walk instead of the running. I still enjoy that. And I read books as well. And I have learned to reach out, to just pick the phone and say, hello, Monique, how are you? And thank you. You connected me to another Black executive director, and we do talk. We talk every 2 weeks, and it keeps me going. It's just another place I can go and say, today was just so hard, and this is how I'm feeling. You need to reach out and find other ways of coping. So I do some of those at the moment, and that's how I cope. Thank you for that. Thank you. And Priya, if I could come to this question to you, if that's okay. Questions from Doreen. Thank you, Doreen. Do others see, I'll direct it to you, do you see the double impact of being from a minority group and also being a woman?
Oh, totally. I mean, for me, because of the job I did pretty early in my career, being a woman was a very big thing. I stood out like a sore thumb among a sea of non-female faces. So there is definitely a double impact of that. But I'll come back to something. I think we would have all achieved success when we are allowed to feel like ourselves in a room and contribute value as ourselves, irrespective of our gender, our color, our background, and everything. And at the really good teams, and I have to say I've been lucky to be part of some of those, make you feel that way. My contribution is my Priya's contribution. It doesn't matter that I'm a woman or Black, white, gender, it doesn't matter. So I mean, I don't know if that answers the question, but there is definitely an impact of both. The other thing I just mentioned for a minute, because Elizabeth mentioned that she's a migrant in the country, is also that's another element of diversity. Because when you come, I mean, and I've come from a different country, and I've settled here, and it was different. And there were a lot of people who went out of their way to make me feel comfortable and get used to just even just get used to what's the cuisine, that what do people eat when they feel it's really cold and horrible outside and stuff like that, and all that makes a difference. So Elizabeth, I mean, I'm totally with you when you say people will help, you just have to ask for it.
I think thank you, Priya. I think recognizing as well that some people are working in quite toxic, challenging environments at the moment, and I think this question maybe connects to that. And Wayne, if I could ask you this question: how do you keep integrity during the challenging times in the boardroom?
Oh, such a big subject. I mean, it's an important subject, and I'll talk about it a lot as well. But again, it comes back to your values and what makes you you. And obviously for me, my Christian faith sets those principles there, and that makes it even more subconscious that I need to do the right thing, because people know, oh, why do you do that? Because he's a Christian. And I've had situations in the exec team where in an exec team where I've been asked to sign documents to falsify paying less duty on particular goods than I should do. And I refused. And when you have those situations, you've got to deal with it. And especially, so I'm not saying those things are easy, but who do you represent? You're not only representing yourself, and can you be true to yourself when you're going to say something or do something which counter against all that you stand for? Because once you've stepped that line, then people look at you differently. Doesn't matter what ethnicity you are, they will look at you differently. Yeah. And trust goes out the window. We've seen that with a lot of politicians that we've had. When they cross that line, what happens?
Yeah, thank you, Wayne. Again, very powerful and straight talking too. We've got some great questions today. So Dawn, thank you very much. And actually, what I should also say is thank you so much to everyone who's already responded to my call out for contacts with social care colleagues. I really appreciate it, and I will follow those up. But Dawn's got another brilliant question. Elizabeth, if I may ask you this question: how do you cope with other minorities who are unsupportive of you coming up and making an impact? That's a big question. When it happens, and it does happen, and when it happens,
First of all, it surprises you because you're not expecting it, but this is life, and you've got to find a way of coping with it. So my way of coping with this, I have tried, in one particular occasion, I have tried to make time to reach out and to just have a chat and say, what is going on? What can I do differently? Where are you? Where, what do I need to support with? Or just share with me, where is this coming from? And what could I do differently so that we can be seen here to be working together? It happens, and the very first time it was such a shock, but it does happen. It's real, it is there. I cope by reaching out where I can. I reach out to suss it out. Don't fight back because it just gets messy. If you end up trying to fight it, it's just hang back, take a step back. Everybody's going through something that is not all over written on our faces. You just don't know where they are. Are they in a difficult place? What are their challenges? What are they going through? What's going on for them? Maybe a step back to try and understand that on one occasion has helped me. On other occasions, it's just to hang back and let be and just keep doing what you're doing and make sure, the integrity is important. And so long as you toe that line of integrity, nothing else can shake you away or take you away from that. But it does happen, yeah.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for that honest response. I'm going to stay with you, Elizabeth, for a moment, and then I'm going to come to Priya. Just this second question, I bring it to you because it's very common. It says, just because we're from ethnically diverse backgrounds, we're then seen or asked or expected to know everything about EDI. How do you handle that?
I confront it. I just say, look, I'm not a specialist. I will share with you my experiences of the challenges I have faced, of the racism I have faced. I can share that, and I share that openly. And I can also share how I coped with it or how I was left feeling for the sake of educating people around me. But I am not the expert. But by virtue of my professional line and what I do, I have picked up on best practices here and there. There are lots of organizations doing incredible things that I can also share that we can implement to make things better. But I usually come out up front and say, look, I'm not the expert, but I have lived experiences that I can share.
Thank you. Thank you. That's a helpful response. And Priya,
sorry, can I add to that?
Of course you can.
Yeah. One of the things I'd say is also it's important to remember that we have our lived experiences, but they may be very different from somebody else's lived experiences.
Sure.
And I've been sort of bitten in the past where somebody or I've had a bad experience in the past where someone thought just because I'm the sponsor of EDI in my company that I should have faced everything everybody else has faced. And that is not humanly possible, right? Everyone faces different things. And the challenges, I mean, even here, what Wayne would have faced and what Elizabeth has faced is probably different from what I have faced.
Sure.
And it's just having the thing to say that doesn't make my challenges any lesser or worse, but they are different. And so sorry, I just thought I'd add that in.
No, it's helpful. Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you for that. It's an important point too. And just to come to you, Priya, because I know you've seen it. We had a question about coaching and mentoring, and if I can ask the question and if you could answer it again for me. So the question is about, you mentioned coaching and mentoring, but is there anything specifically that helped you on the specific step into the boardroom? So not your journey in general, but that specific jump into the boardroom.
Well, it's over a period of time. And I think Wayne sort of said it really well, where he said, we've got to invest in ourselves. So all the coaching, the mentoring, the training, everything helped me with one thing, and that was learning more about myself. And it was being more self-aware. And I mean, I can guarantee every single person who's on this call has got value to add. They'll add value in a different way. I mean, I can absolutely guarantee that. But then the difficult thing is for you to believe in that yourself. Understand what that value is. And I think all the coaching, the mentoring, and the training, all it does is help crystallize that in your head. So I can't say that there was one specific thing I did that helped me get this particular position. But what I would say is that it builds over time and effectively helps in the self-awareness, and ideally sort of evolves you to get to a place. The other thing that was really important to me to get into this position, again, COVID, I lost some really, really close people, including a childhood friend who was in the health service. And that suddenly made me feel, what the hell am I doing? I need to do something. I really wanted to do something which was helping, supporting, touching the health service in some way. And frankly, what I felt I could add most value with was my business background, which is why I came as a non-exec director. And I think that's my answer, is that basically just build on yourself one by one. The more self-aware you get, it will eventually get you to exactly where you want to be.
No, I hear you. Thank you for that. So I think I'm going to try. There have been so many gems, and Millie's in my team, and Millie works with me. Millie does all our content and has been working with me behind the scenes to support me. So thank you so much, Millie. But Millie messaged me and said, Monique, I'm just taking down all these gems. And I agree with her. There's been so many gems and kind of profound elements of advice that you've provided for us today. I'm going to try and summarize a bit, if I may, because I think there were some really pertinent points. And I also just want to pick up on some comments and sharing what you're doing. That's what I would describe it as in the chat as well, that I think was important. The message that hit me between the eyes about what you've all shared today really is about recognizing the value that you bring. I heard that from all of you, both about yourself, but also really speaking to people about that. And I think it really connects to some of the situations that people and challenges people may be facing. Just having that recognition of, you do bring value, you have got talent, you are somebody, and you deserve to have the career and the journey that you want. And I think, Elizabeth, you shared something very profound about that clarity of your vision and goal, where you wanted to get to. And I think you've all, Wayne and Priya, your wealth of experience from the different elements of career that you've had, how you've used and navigated that to bring you to the boardroom and the experience you bring now. I think really hearing what were the tools that helped you. Was it that innate resilience that I am going to do this, which Wayne, you spoke about, and Wayne, if I could say, I think you have very broad shoulders, because you are absolutely running at the front and paving that way for other people, and I thank you for that immensely, actually, because we need people who will do that. Not all of us are able to do that, and that's the honest truth. But Priya, I also heard of you as well, talking about some of the support tools, the things that helped you. And I think what I heard from you as well is not just these things helped me, but they helped me to understand myself better too. They help me to answer that question about the value you bring and having that clarity of it. I saw some comments in the chat about people being ready. Some people are not ready. I think there are many people who are ready. There are many people who are ready and they don't know how to get to the destination. They don't know how to navigate, especially that last step, getting into the boardroom. But there are also some people who may have technical ability, may have competencies, but they're not quite in a state of readiness. They don't quite understand what else is needed. And I think on previous sessions, we've heard a lot as well about more programs that are tailor-made for people who are minoritized, so that it really does lean into some of the lived experience things that we're talking about, some of the things about working in environments where you're the only one, some of that how to put yourself forward in those spaces. I describe it collectively as being in a state of readiness. And I think there's something there about people understanding to support people to be in a state of readiness. That's not talking about a lack of capability. That's about being able to deliver effectively when you're in a minority in an environment, and to deliver to the best of your ability until some of that inclusion moves forward. Okay, I think that's what we're talking about there. And I think we need more of those. I've actually been contacted by someone working in the Midlands who is doing that research and work now to almost look at, okay, what support is needed for that last step? What should that look like to help more people to be in? So people are banging down Andy's door, when he was saying about, actually they are banging down his door and they are ready and waiting. And Andy, it's fantastic what you shared there about seeing someone who wasn't quite ready, but you still wanted to be able to offer some sort of support to help with the next step. We need more chairs who are doing that, who are going to step out and see and look at how they can succession plan and support talent development differently. So I really think what I'm hearing here is there is always something about responsibility of self, right? And I think here I hope what our wonderful panel guest has shared is to give some insights into what may help you on that journey of responsibility of self and understanding yourself first and foremost. But also what we've heard loud and clear is about the challenges that still remain. What I would like to say is, number one, to thank you. Thank you for your time. Thank you for your energy. Thank you for your participation today. But most importantly, thank you to our panel guests. You know, you've given me your time. You've waited patiently for me to come to you and kind of explain more about what this is about. But thank you so much for sharing openly and honestly, and really giving us, I think, back in Bravery in the Boardroom in terms of giving us that call to action as well, and with the audience today. So thank you very, very much for your time.
Thank you.
You're most welcome. And thank you. Yeah, thank you for everyone in the chat. If there's any final reflections you'd like to leave us in the chat, please do so. Because I don't have my right-hand lady with me, I didn't remember to do the feedback form. So I will email the feedback form link out to everybody and make sure that you get that. I think I managed okay, Ruby. I think without you by my side, I think I managed okay, but I'll let you be the judge of that when we speak and have a debrief. So Millie, I think I've remembered everything. I think we have one more slide which says thank you, if I remember rightly. But what I would just say to everyone is thank you so much for coming.